All right, welcome to WTF Divorce. Today we are lucky to be joined by Tracy Gould Sheinin, and Tracy is a divorce mediator. And today she is going to give us a little walkthrough of how to prepare for mediation and what to expect when you get there. Thanks for being here, Tracy.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm always happy to share helpful information for people about mediation.
What does it look like? We discussed we're going to do mediation, we have it scheduled. Or maybe even before that, tell us, how do you prepare for mediation?
Yeah, so it's similar to how you would prepare for divorce in general. And so these are steps you want to take when you're heading into divorce, thinking about it, preparing for it, and then definitely before mediation. So, one of the first steps to take is to get a full accounting of your finances, which I know some folks find unpleasant, but you got to do it. It's just such a critical piece of the conversation in divorce, and you will talk about it in mediation. You want to take a full accounting of your finances, and you want to have this ready before you head into a mediation for sure, but you want to have it in your head as you're moving through divorce anyway. And you want to look at it from four different aspects. What do you have? What do you owe? What do you earn? And what do you spend? So you could do it in four different phases so that you don't feel completely overwhelmed. But the first thing is to look at all of your accounts, as in what do you have for assets? Checking, savings, investment, retirement, crypto, 529s, anything that holds money. Take a look at it, get the balance down on paper, write down the last four digits of that account number, and take note of when did it originate. Was it started before the marriage or during the marriage? And do that for each account. And then do the same thing for any debts you might have: credit cards, furniture store loans, personal loans, tax debt. Do the amounts and in whose name they're in, and if it started before or during the marriage. And then look at what you earn. A lot of us don't always have those numbers really ready in our heads. So try to get an annual number and a monthly number if you can. And then look at what you spend, your expenses. And that one can get really tedious, but it's really important. So, mortgage, rent, utilities, cell phone, car insurance, groceries, everything. And if you're really not sure, just start a log, write down everything that you spend for a month and see where that leaves you. Because that's going to give you a really good sense of what you need to have to survive once you are divorced. So those are the four categories. What do you have? What do you owe? What do you earn? What do you spend? Then, once you have that done, you're really, really ready to talk about money, much better than if you don't have that information. So, then the second thing you want to do is think about your priorities on everything from the money to the house to the stuff in the house. What are your priorities in terms of what do you really, really want? What would be nice to have? And what you could let go of or what you could give up? And write it down so that when you go into the mediation, you know what to really advocate for and what you're really willing to let go. That might not be a big deal because it is going to be a negotiation. You will have to compromise. So knowing ahead of time sort of where your harder boundaries are and your softer lines are will really help you prepare for that.
Let me pause you real
Yeah.
quick. On the organizing phase of things, is this stuff you're doing on your own with your partner or soon to be ex partner? And what if you don't know, really, you don't have much transparency as to what is going on with the finances?
Sure. So if things are amicable and you all communicate well, absolutely do it together because it's going to yield better information. If there's not transparency and there's not a lot of trust and you're doing it on your own, do the best that you can in researching what you do have access to. And then if you know there are accounts out there, but you don't have access to them, still write that down. And if you have an attorney, talk to them about it because they can help you get that information through what's called discovery.
Okay, very good. Back to it. I interrupted you, but so
Yeah,
figuring
yep,
out what's most important, what's nice to have, what you can do without. So that's where we're at now. We're
yes.
writing those things down.
And for everything, again, for the big stuff like the house and for little things like the crock pot. So don't forget about the household furnishings and the personal property. That's got to be figured out also. And there may be some things you have an attachment to. There may be some things you're willing to let go. Just write it all down so that when it comes up for discussion, you're ready to talk about it.
All right, so we have all of this written down, and now we're presenting this to our mediator, our lawyer. What are the next steps with once we've gathered all these documents?
So now you're relatively ready to head into mediation. For the mindset piece of it, I would encourage you to remember that it is a negotiation, meaning you're going to share a position and a request. They're going to counter and share a position and a request. It might go back and forth like that, and that's okay. You probably are going to have to compromise. You're not going to get everything you want, but you also don't have to give up everything you want. So going in remembering that it's a negotiation and you're going to have to compromise can help set the mindset.
Very good. All right, so we are there. We're at the mediation. Like, what other kind of things should we be worried about? Is it just us and our current spouse and a mediator in a room together?
It could be. It very well might be. If you don't have attorneys, it might be you and your spouse or partner in the room with the mediator. If you have attorneys, they'll be there with you. And depending on the dynamics, if it's contentious or amicable, also depending on the attorney's preferences or the mediator's preferences, you might all stay in the room together, or you might separate into separate rooms. That's called caucus, where you and your attorney are in one room, they're in the other room, and the mediator goes back and forth. Either way is really fine. They both work really well. If you're not really comfortable being in the same room as your soon to be ex and you'd rather negotiate without them in the room, you can ask for that. You can ask for a caucus. You have that right.
All right, and is this like we're going in and we're gonna knock this all out in an hour, 4 hours, multiple days? What does the experience look like?
It depends on a couple of factors. So, some folks and some attorneys and some mediators like to try to spend the whole day knocking the whole thing out. That can work. Other folks, like me, I like to break it up into shorter sessions over time. So we would meet for 2 hours, break, do homework, process emotions, come back together, work again at it. So when you're shopping around for a mediator, ask what their process is, ask what their style is. There's pros and cons to both, I think. And then, you may plan to be there all day, but it may stall at some point. You may hit a little bit of a brick wall. It's called an impasse when that happens. It doesn't mean that it's completely over. You might stop that day and come back another day. That's perfectly okay also. So it's somewhat unpredictable in that way. But I do advise if it's an all day type of mediation approach, go ahead and block out the whole day, get childcare taken care of, any other things you might have responsibility for, just in case it goes over several hours and you're not going to be freaking out that you're not somewhere else that you need to be at that time.
So we've talked about finances and the stuff. Obviously, the biggest thing for most people going through divorce and mediation will be the kids, the parenting time, the split. Any insight or advice about what goes on during that part of a mediation?
Yes, and that actually is a good thing to think about a little bit ahead of time, or maybe a lot ahead of time, what you envision a good parenting plan might look like to fit your children, their schedule, their ages, their needs, as well as the parents. When you're in the mediation, you're going to talk about, they'll call it the parenting plan, and it will be comprised of regular, everyday weeks. It'll also be discussed around holidays and school breaks and summer. And so you're going to talk about where the children will be for any given day throughout the year. And it gets down to the very specific. So it's not just Friday to Sunday, for example. It'll be Friday at a certain time to Sunday at a certain time. At the exchange location will be spelled out. So it gets very detailed. It can feel tedious, but it's really important to be very detailed and specific so everybody knows exactly what to expect.
And does that look like I come in with what I want, the situation? I want Thanksgiving. I want you to have Christmas. I want it to be 2255. So we should do it that way. Or both people coming in with like their own agenda or thoughts of what things should be, and then the mediator makes the decision? How does that work itself out?
So sometimes both parents come in with ideas and plans. Sometimes neither do because they don't know what's going to be best or what's even recommended. Or maybe one does and one doesn't. And so what the mediator should do is hear from both parents what they think might be the best plan or an ideal plan. And then together they try to figure out, even if the mediator is going back and forth, it's still a together conversation, what's really going to work in terms of what's realistic and what's best for the children. And it does sometimes depend on their age. It also sometimes depends on parents' work schedules. So it might be a 2-2-5, like you mentioned, which means 2 days with one parent, 2 days with the second parent, 5 days with the first parent, and then it alternates. So it's 2-2-5 with the second parent. There's a lot of different ways to do a parenting plan. And your attorney, if you have one, should explain this to you. If not, or even still, the mediator should be able to explain these to you also so that you can envision what that really looks like in a real world sense.
So the mediator's job there is to help kind of present the options and figure out what makes sense for both parties.
Right. And then the parties will decide if they agree or not. So the mediator is not going to tell them what they will do or should do. The attorneys might give them some advice. The mediator should not give them advice. They should give them information and help them arrive at their own position and ideas.
And so I'm sure it's a rare thing, but it happens where one person says, "Nope, I don't like that setup. I'm just gonna sit here." And now what? What happens in that situation?
So mediation is considered a voluntary process, and that is from beginning to end. So you decide if you're going to show up or not, and then you decide what you agree to or not. So either person can say no to anything and not budge off of that, decide not to compromise. They have that right. They can decide to get up and leave if they want. When that happens, when there's a real firm no and there's no movement, then you might be what's called impassing. So you might come to an impasse where the mediation stops at that point, and maybe you come back another time, or maybe you don't. Maybe it then moves on to a different legal action. But yeah, it really, the agreement made in mediation is comprised of the two people compromising and deciding to agree, no one making them do that.
I mean, it does sound, I'm sure it's a very stressful day or block of time, but like the idea of like getting this wrapped up in a tighter, quicker way does seem like a really attractive option when you're going through the tough part of divorce.
Yeah, it really can be. If you have what we call marathon mediation, where you go for 8 or 10 hours in a day, it's exhausting, but you can work it all out in a session like that. And then if that saves you from having multiple hearings and settlement conferences with the attorneys and the back and forth, it really can be worth it in the long run and save you a lot of money, save you a lot of stress, and then you have a plan to move forward. The mediator should let you know ahead of time what to expect in terms of their process. They should also let you know what their fees are so that you know what you're getting into. They should also let you know in the beginning that it is a voluntary process and that it's confidential. And when you're in a separate room, when you're in caucus and you're with the mediator, that conversation is confidential from the conversation with the other party. So if you say something to the mediator and then you think, no, don't tell them that, they have to keep your confidence.
Very good to know. Anything else we want to tell people about mediation and the process? This has been very helpful and insightful.
One other thought, if you do come to agreement, and I hope you do, if you do come to agreement and it's not, you have to write it down and sign it while you're at mediation, or else technically it's not an agreement. So you can have a verbal agreement and you may be able to stick with it, but you also may have a verbal agreement and somebody changes their mind later and there's nothing you can do about it. So if you really want it to stick, you've got to write it down and sign it while you're at mediation.
It's like signing the marriage agreement, just the opposite. Don't leave.
Yeah,
Don't leave without it.
that's right.
All right. Well, Tracy, thank you so much. This has been very helpful. Let people know where they can contact you.
Sure, you can find me at claritymediation.net. That's my website. You can schedule a free consultation call there. There's also some other resources there. Or on the socials, it's at Clarity Mediation.
Thank you so much, Tracy.
Thank you.